All right, here we are at the live Sinclair Method Q&A session with the one and only Bruce Rose. Bruce, I feel like you are somewhat famous inside of our program. Everyone's always talking about, well, Bruce said this on the call and Bruce said that. So I think you have some ways to coach people and counsel people on TSM that is very helpful and sticky for people. So thanks for being here with me.
No worries, you too as well. We hear it from the UK all the time too. It's Kate, that Katie on the YouTube is what they say.
That's funny. Well, it's good. That's why we need lots of different styles and faces in this space, because people say things differently, and I can say one thing and you can say another, and it will resonate and stick with someone. So I'm glad to be here. Hey, Seth, glad to have you here. I got to meet Seth in person last week. We had a naltrexone symposium here in the US. It was really cool to celebrate the 30th year anniversary of naltrexone being approved by the FDA for alcohol. So it was some TSM success stories, as well as some researchers and doctors in the field, like maybe 30 of us or so, coming together to talk about this treatment and how to make it more well-known. It was a really cool event. I wish you could have been there, Bruce.
Yeah, we need to get something started like that in the UK, I think. And I saw the picture of Seth, so I saw your photograph.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was really cool to meet someone. Like, I met so many people who I've known for years online through TSM, and then finally meeting them in person. It was really cool.
And something I was taught years ago when I was doing stuff was that will be the smallest meeting we'll ever have.
Yeah, it's
every year that meeting will just get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, TSM is still wildly unknown. So yeah, we're working on it. But like today, what we're doing, and I want to just start by welcoming everyone who's joining us. We're streaming on a bunch of different platforms. So whether you're coming from Facebook or YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, we're on several different platforms. So just welcome to everyone. It's great to have you here. This is a session where we come together for an hour to answer your Sinclair Method questions. Bruce and I have personal experience with the method, and Bruce and I have both been counselors, coaches in the field for many years now, and just love to help people, as I like to say, meet the medicine halfway. Naltrexone is really powerful, but in order to truly heal from alcohol use disorder and transform your drinking habits so that your life doesn't revolve around alcohol anymore, even if you're still drinking or you choose to go alcohol free. We love to help people with that aspect of the method. So we are here to answer your guys' questions that you have, no matter where you're at on your journey, whether you're just doing this initial research, whether you've already started, whether you've been on it for a while. We would love to support you. You can drop your comments or questions in the chat and we will get to them. Oh, we have Choose Your Horizon here with us as well. Hello, welcome. So Choose Your Horizon is a platform that, just FYI, they're in the US and they're helping people get access to naltrexone in about half the states. So it's really exciting to see that naltrexone is becoming more and more accessible. Many of you know, as part of my story, I tried like reaching out to at least 5 different doctors and I couldn't get the prescription when I first learned about this in 2017. So a lot has changed since then. With you guys, Bruce, because I don't know much about the UK healthcare system. I mean, that's an issue for you guys over there as well. I don't understand it all that well, but from what I understand, you guys work with one doctor, but otherwise, if someone wants to get on naltrexone or nalmefene, it's a little bit tricky over there. Is that true?
Yeah, currently it's actually next to impossible. So
wow,
you can't go to your normal doctor and just get naltrexone unless you have 1 in 100, 1 in 200. Very, very few doctors even know about it here, and very, very well, none. There's one that I know that is prescribed over the last 6 years that I know of. There are 1 or 2 private doctors in London. But again, we'll probably talk about it as we go through. What they tend to do is simply prescribe. And we both know that prescribing on its own works to a degree, but it also needs the additional support and structure with people. So apart from that, yeah, I mean, it's Here in the UK, we are the only company that actually provides the full, like you guys do in the States, the full support, the full backing, the actual program support alongside. It's slightly different here. So for a doctor to prescribe in this country, or doctors should be, they'll only do it if there is a backup support program. So because we are the only organization that give a full, proper backup service, then there's only one or two doctors around that will prescribe. So
I see. So they're unwilling to prescribe unless someone's getting more support outside of it. I mean, that makes sense. A lot of the research, when you look at it, the majority of it says naltrexone should be used with some type of support. And what David Sinclair, I remember reading in one of his studies, he specifically said that for those of us that are using the Sinclair method to drink less, the support needs to be centered around harm reduction and drink reduction. If it's support that's promoting abstinence, like AA, or maybe you have a counselor or therapist is trying to pressure you to quit drinking now or soon, it can actually be counterproductive. And I've seen that for a lot of people who are on naltrexone, whether they're going to AA or they're working with a therapist that is really still kind of abstinence-based mindset and oriented. It can be counterproductive because a lot of people start naltrexone sort of with this guilt, like, am I allowed to drink? It's okay to drink, because we've struggled with it for so long. We feel like we should just be able to quit. But those of us who understand how alcohol addiction functions in the brain, it's not as easy for most of us just to quit. So when someone's getting mixed messages like, yes, you want to drink on naltrexone following the Sinclair method, and then they're also being told, but try not to drink, they're just like, wait a second, what do you want me to do here? So just for people to be aware, no matter where you're at on this journey, if you are getting support from someone who is more of an abstinence-minded support system, it could be harmful on your journey. Not to say it is for sure. I've known people who go to AA and do TSM. They're just not open with their journey, but just to be aware of that, I would say.
Yeah, and the other thing that I've been learning recently as well is, am I trying to market myself? I like you. I do a lot of social media stuff, and I'm trying to market myself now as the endorphin man. And
you need a cape, I think.
well, there's a guy in the UK that does it for something else, so I thought, hang on a minute, if he can do it, then. But the reason I do it is because, like you, I mean, I do a lot of live TikToks. So what I do in TikTok, I'm not going into details. I'm just explaining how the whole process works.
Yeah.
And you just do it again and again and again and again and again. And whilst I was doing it again and again and again and again, I suddenly realized that all I was talking about most of the time was the addiction is to endorphin. The reason, the volume that we drink, we're chasing the endorphin reward, is endorphin. And the reason why people can't stop and stay stopped is because of deprivation and craving for endorphin. So how much we drink and when we drink is for the endorphin reward. The addiction is endorphin. The relapse is endorphin. Everything is endorphin. And that's why we have a 90% relapse rate with most programs, because we're not treating the endorphin. And it's such a it was such a mind-opening thing to me when I suddenly realized, I thought, it's endorphin. That's the issue. The endorphin, and when we target the endorphin with naltrexone and support, that's why the Sinclair method has a 78% success rate. I keep saying to people, we cannot counsel people out of addiction.
Yeah.
And it will help with the emotional, psychological. We're not saying don't do it, but the actual addiction is a neurological addiction to a chemical, endorphin. And if we don't deal with that, we can go to as much counseling or therapy or support or group meetings or whatever. We're just going to go round and round and round, drink, sobriety, relapse, drink, sobriety, relapse.
Exactly.
It's endorphin. It's everything is endorphin. Good night.
That knowledge is such power too, because for me, it takes away a lot of the heaviness and the shame and stigma that is so often linked with, like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I control my drinking? It must be, again, like this character defect that I have. It's my problem, or it's my trauma from my childhood. And it almost feels like this impossible thing that we need to solve, where, okay, we go digging up our trauma, we think we work through it, but yet we're still thinking about alcohol all of the time, to your point, because of that endorphin reward. We're craving that reward that alcohol provides. And when you quit drinking, that doesn't go away. And in fact, David Sinclair showed with the alcohol deprivation effect that if you quit drinking, the craving can actually be enhanced and increased, and you think about it more. And it makes so much sense to me. If I fast and don't eat for a day or two, I'm thinking about food all the time. And something similar happens when we try to give up alcohol and our brain is still wired to crave it. We start thinking about it all of the time. And I think when we can understand the alcohol use disorder in that light, that it is just the brain kind of mistakenly craving alcohol, looking for that reward because it's doing what it's supposed to do. It's learned this behavior. It's learned to seek out something that's rewarding. When we can learn about it from that lens, I feel like it's very empowering, and we recognize that, wow, we can actually, thanks to neuroplasticity, our brains can change. And naltrexone combined with mindful drinking, habit change, we can reverse all of this. And take it from me and countless other success stories. When you go through this treatment, you get to a place where you really feel like the alcohol use disorder, the addiction has just been reversed from your brain, like it's been erased. It's incredibly freeing. Not an overnight fix, but man, it's life-changing when it's given time to work.
I spoke to a guy this afternoon, as you know, from your organization. And what a lovely lad. And he's been sober now, I think, about 2 months. And he was coming from being a very, very heavy drinker. We spoke to him for ages and ages, and we tried this and tried that. And each week when we were doing your group, we were sort of talking through bits and pieces. And he hasn't drunk now for 2 months. And he took, I said, right, I said, try this for the next 3 weeks. And I gave him some advice. I said, do this for the next 3 weeks. And he came back and said, Bruce, I did exactly what you told me to do. And I didn't know what the result was. And I thought, uh-oh.
And it's never been worse.
It's never been worse. He said, Bruce, I haven't drunk for 3 weeks. And I said, right. I said, how did you get on? I think a little bit kind of. And he said, not 1 ounce of craving. He said, the only way I can describe it is peace. It's just complete peace. And he said, and he sounded a bit confused today. He sort of said, am I meant to feel something? Because he's so used to abstinence being a complete struggle. Mm-hmm. He said, I was expecting it to be hard. I was expecting it to be difficult, or there's meant to be a struggle. But I've got another guy here in the UK we're working with, bottle of scotch, I think you call it in America, bottle of scotch a day, went into rehab, came back out. He was just about to relapse. He started on the program. And I said to him, right, okay, take your pill, wait an hour and have 1 can of beer every day for the next month. And he's been doing it now for about 3 weeks. And he said, I'm getting sick of having my can of beer every day, Bruce. He said, there's some days I just don't want it. And this is a guy who is a seasoned bottle of scotch a day drinker, and started on the medication. And now he's, we don't normally proper medical advice and support, but he's just incredible. I mean, just, you know the story. We could sit here all night and give you story after story.
Yeah, that is incredible. And when you go alcohol free after you've been drinking on naltrexone for a while, it's a completely different experience than what I know. You've asked me that question a lot, like comparing being sober before TSM and naltrexone and after. And it's just, there's no comparison. Like just before, it's just this white knuckled experience where every day you're literally fighting that urge to drink. You're taking it one day at a time. Just don't drink today. Just don't drink today. And then it's a battle, and a lot of people lose that battle over and over and over again. And with naltrexone, it became really easy not to drink. I tell people I would forget to drink because the desire wasn't there. Now, it didn't happen immediately on TSM. It happened gradually over time, but the more practice I got with alcohol-free time and other hobbies and coping skills and things like that, the easier and easier it became. Okay. We have several questions. So thank you guys for submitting the questions. Those of you who have in the chat, if you're just joining, welcome. We're going to start answering some of these questions, whatever platform you're on, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. Drop your questions in the comment and we will do our best to get to them. So question number 1. If you slowly reduce your alcohol use while using naltrexone and you end up giving up drinking altogether, do you still have to take naltrexone? I will just answer this personally. No. So like I haven't drank alcohol in about 6 years or so, and I haven't taken naltrexone in that time either. I was doing the Sinclair method, so I was only taking naltrexone 1 hour before drinking. So I started the treatment as a daily drinker. The longer I was on the treatment, the less days I was drinking. So I wasn't taking naltrexone every day anymore, only before drinking. And then when I stopped drinking, I stopped the medicine. And it's something that was kind of surprising to me and maybe would be to others, is that the results are permanent. Like I didn't have to keep taking naltrexone to sustain the results. Once I reached what's known as like the pharmacological extinction point, or as I like to say, just like total regained control over alcohol, I only took naltrexone when drinking. And when I quit drinking, I was never planning to. It just kind of happened. I went 4 months without drinking just because I didn't want to, and I ended up going alcohol free. So all this to say, a lot of us who don't drink anymore after TSM, we don't take naltrexone either. And then for people that do still drink, they just continue to follow the TSM protocol, which is in taking it about an hour before drinking. Anything you want to add to that, Bruce?
I've just realized something.
What?
With Matt and I, Matt's been through the program as well here in the UK. So Matt explains, we're learning at the moment that Matt explains everything because Matt's been through the process. So he knows from a personal point of view, this is what happens. Whereas I always tend to come at it from the neurological point of view. And so I kind of explain everything. Well, no, this is what's happening. And, and sometimes you just get a glazed look from people going, right, Bruce, we've heard that before. But basically what I'm saying is hopefully we'll give one. Katie's got the experience and I'll explain the boring part.
No, it's not. I think it's interesting to a lot of people, and that's what people really like about your group call and Thrive. Like they like that you kind of get into the details and the science and all of that. I think it's interesting to a lot of us.
So sorry. So going back to that then, with the question, do you still have to take naltrexone long term? I'm going to laugh when I say this.
No,
naltrexone is an opiate inhibitor, an opiate blocker. So when you take naltrexone, you have receptors in the brain. The naltrexone will sit on the opiate receptor as a filter and basically reduce or block the receptor. So when you drink alcohol, it forces the brain to produce a huge amount of endorphin. So when the brain produces that huge amount of endorphin without naltrexone, it hits the receptor and bang, the brain gets the reward and you get the buzz and the enjoyment. You take naltrexone 1 hour before you drink, it sits on the receptor in the brain and it lowers the amount of endorphin in the brain. Going back to what I said at the beginning, it's all to do with endorphin. So the drive to drink, the volume that we drink is because the brain is chasing that huge amount of endorphin. So when you lower the amount of endorphin by using naltrexone on the opiate receptor, it then reduces the drive and the desire to drink. And more importantly, it rewires the neurological pathways. Now, I'm not even going to go into that one because I will bore everyone stupid for 10 minutes on that one. But it rewires the pathways in the brain, and that's what gives us the long-term success. So when you stop drinking, you're not having to block any endorphins, so therefore you don't need to take it.
Yeah. No, I think it's like the science of TSM and naltrexone, like there's a 101 version of it. And I think it's really helpful for those of us on the treatment to understand, because that, like I said earlier, that knowledge is power. And when we can understand, okay, this is how my brain learned to become dependent on alcohol, and this is how it's going to be unlearning it. And so I appreciate you explaining it. I know not everyone is super passionate and curious about it like we are, but I think it's helpful just to have that knowledge, because when we're craving alcohol and stuck in that addicted state, it's almost like it becomes a part of our identity. Like it's me who's craving it, but really it's just a function of like automatic loops in the brain, if you will. And naltrexone works to interrupt that. And it's important to be aware of how and why that's happening.
I call it grey water or dirty water. Around alcohol addiction, there has always been and always has been, and I guess always will be, what I call dirty water. There's a whole bunch of stuff where people are just, when we talk to people, and you'll get it all the time as well, Katie, people start to question, what about this? And how does that, what? And then you can see people are like a little bit, they don't know what's happening. Something's going on and I can't seem to stop it. And I've tried this and I've tried that and I've tried this therapy and this group and that group, but they just can't put their finger on it, and they just can't sort of solve it. I've started to realize that because we're not looking the root cause of addiction. Now, yes, emotions, habits, etc., are part of the process to come out of it, but the addiction is to endorphin. And when we understand the addiction, we don't complicate it. It's not. That's all it is. An addiction is a neurological addiction, a chemical in the brain called endorphin. That's the issue. And we've got naltrexone. You regulate and control that. You can then work through the habitual emotional stuff as time goes on. But then you'll hear people going on, and I'll do this in 100 days here and 2 days there. And if I go to the gym and I do this, and you see people trying so hard, but they're missing the crux of the whole thing, which is endorphin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, TSM is not about white knuckling. It's also not about exclusively relying on the pill alone, but like we talked about in our group call last night, when you take naltrexone, the longer you're on it, for most of us, it gives us this space to really, like, before going on the medicine, it would be like, I would want to drink, and man, I would need to get a drink as soon as possible. Like, that craving was just like almost like an obsession. Like, I was needing it for my survival in a way, like dying of thirst, dying for a drink. And the longer I was on naltrexone, the weaker that urge came. And so I could get a thought or an urge to drink, and I could be like, yeah, I could drink, or I could go to the gym instead and go to the grocery store and cook dinner. It became an option as opposed to this compulsion that was beyond my ability to control it. So it does require, our mindfulness and thoughtfulness and planning to change those habits, because the automatic behavior is think about drinking, go home and drink. That's what I'd been doing for 10 years. But as I use naltrexone and then start coupling it with more mindfulness and just planning and thinking and intentionality around my drinking, it really helped the method work. And I will just say, like, a couple of our members in our program recently have been on the method for a while. And it was interesting to see, this has happened with 2 members recently, where they were kind of dismissing mindful drinking as something that was trivial and maybe unimportant. And lately, they both individually, in separate instances, started to value and practice mindful drinking. And it's amazing to see the transformation that has happened in both of them just by being more mindful, or, like we like to say, like, curious around their drinking. Like, okay, why do I have to drink in this setting? Why do I need to pour that 4th drink? Just these simple ways our thoughts can be interrupted with just some conscious awareness. And honestly, myself, I thought it was kind of trivial. I was like, this is kind of dumb and pointless and not effective. But when you can combine that mindfulness, curiosity with your drinking on naltrexone, it just interrupts that pattern and that habitual loop that's been operating within many of us for years or decades. And man, it's powerful. So please do not underestimate the power of mindfulness while you're on TSM and naltrexone.
Brilliant.
Okay. You got the next one?
Yeah. What are the side effects of naltrexone, and do they taper off after a few days? Side effects of naltrexone, the most common thing is, I used to say 30%, but I heard the other day from, I think it was your doctor, Katie. I'd watched a video, I think. Anyway, one of the side effects is nausea. I used to say about 20-25% of people will have slight nausea on day 1 and day 2 normally. Some people report a little bit of what they call spaciness, lightheadedness. Again, it sometimes happens on day 1 and day 2. There's only a small percentage of people that experience that. We've worked with hundreds of clients. I think I've only ever had one client who wasn't able to get onto the medication. They came out in a rash. That was one client out of hundreds. But the most common thing is nausea and slight lightheadedness, and it normally goes after 24, 48 hours. By day 3, in the majority of cases, people are absolutely fine. And do they taper off? If you're asking about the side effects, do the side effects taper off after a few days? Yes, normally after 2 days, 2 to 3 days. Again, if you're depending on your prescriber, If you're still noticing them after a couple of days, then please go back to your prescriber and just say, hey, listen, am I experiencing this? They might be able to suggest different things, like either reducing down a little bit, whatever. Speak to your prescriber, but it doesn't normally last for more than a couple of days.
Yeah, really good. And I just want to say, even if you are someone who's struggling with side effects, there's a couple of coaches in our program who also personally struggled with side effects and for weeks had to work with their doctor on gradually increasing their dose, doing different things to kind of help mitigate them, like eating food and drinking lots of water and things like that. Again, simple things that might seem trivial, but they can honestly make all the difference. But I just want to say, stick it out. It's worth it. There's a small percentage of people that just don't tolerate it. But for most of us, even if you have side effects in the beginning, what I've observed and what the research shows is that they will go away. I always tell people, in my personal opinion, there's no rush to get to the full dose of naltrexone. Some people are eager to, get up to that full dose quickly, but there's no point in making yourself like sick from the side effects if that's the case. So work with your doctor on the dosing regimen. That can really make all the difference. And then someone is a follow-up to this. Every time I take naltrexone, it makes me extremely irritable almost immediately, like an hour later. Is this common? So I actually did a poll because I had the irritability side effect as well. Not all the time, but sometimes when I took naltrexone. One of our members was just talking about this issue as well. And I did a poll a while back. I think over 100 people responded. And if I'm recalling correctly, like 40 to 50% had the irritability side effect. So it doesn't happen for everyone, but it does happen for some. For me, it was just a chance to try to practice more mindful awareness, kind of plan for it. Okay, I know this isn't really me. This is just the medication talking. And I found that I would get the irritability and then usually go away within like an hour or two. And it didn't happen every time I took it. So in the long run, definitely worth it. All of the side effects I had on naltrexone were well worth the benefits. But it's just one of those things that impacts about half of us. Haven't found a way yet to necessarily mitigate it. I don't know if having a full meal or drinking water or things like that would help reduce or eliminate it, but just know that you're not alone. It does impact about half people, and hopefully you will find that the benefits outweigh that side effect. Have you noticed that, or anything you want to say to that specific side effect, Bruce? Oh, you're on mute.
Sometimes. Sorry about that. Sometimes I've noted a couple of questions. It really depends on how long you've been on naltrexone for. Have you seen any reduction in your alcohol intake? And again, it's a public forum, so we don't need specific details unless you want to give them. And how much of a reduction have you seen? Because sometimes where people will mistake side effects of the medication to do with a form of reduction with the process. People will always see some form of reduction when they first start on the medication. So it can be anywhere. It can be anywhere from about 20 to 50%, we find. If it's not 20%, don't worry about it. It doesn't mean it's not working, but it can be 20 to 50% in a lot of cases. With some people, I've seen as much as 60. So if it depends, if your alcohol intake is reduced quite dramatically or you've had a big drop, then there's quite a high chance that it might be the fact that it could be sugar levels from the alcohol. If you've dropped alcohol, then your sugar levels will have dropped. So your sugar could be impacting it, especially with wine. If you're a wine drinker, that will happen a lot. If you're starting to feel tired a lot, it's not the medication in most cases. Again, check with your doctor, but it's often a drop in sugar. So I'm not saying that's what it is. Again, go back to your prescriber and double check it. But it's just that sometimes the drop in alcohol or the reduction in alcohol can actually be masking something else, or the drop in sugar can also cause it as well. If it's not, then check with your prescriber.
Yeah, and someone else says here, my biggest side effect is fatigue. I've had to take a lot of naps. I have heard that from people, and then I've also heard people who get insomnia from it. So it's really interesting how it impacts people differently. And I will say to this individual as well that I find that as we're going through this process of drinking less, it really is a healing journey. And we can think about how much our sleep has been impacted and interrupted by our drinking. You know, when we're going to bed with a bunch of alcohol in our system, we're not getting good sleep oftentimes. And so, what happened for me, and I hear from a lot of people as well, is that they find the need to sleep a lot through this journey. They're sleeping more, they're taking more naps, they're going to bed and sleeping longer, because I mean, I believe our body's just really healing itself as we, you know, redefine our relationship with alcohol and ultimately drink less. So that could be a contribution as well. But I have heard that from people, the tiredness is something linked to it.
I had a period where people said to me, Bruce, that something's happened with the medication. I'm getting all these side effects all of a sudden. And they said, what is it? and they said, I'm just feeling really tired. I'm just having a sleep every afternoon. And then when we went back to the drink diaries, we worked with clients with a drink diary, we noticed that there'd been quite a reduction. And when I'd say to them, are you wine drinkers? They'd say yes. And when we looked at it, we thought, it's a drop in, or it could well be a drop in sugar. So I'd then say to them, I say, right, get as much fruit in you, start eating more fruit. Now, some people will turn to chocolate and what would you call it? Candy.
Yeah.
That's me. I'm becoming American slowly. Chocolate and candy. But our advice is healthy fruit and bananas and stuff like that, and just to up the sugar a little bit again. So,
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because the increase in sugar craving is real for a lot of us. It's a joke among a lot of us or who are like, you know, I told myself I didn't have a sweet tooth before TSM because I was just drinking all my sugar every day. But as I was drinking less, man, I was eating a lot more sugar.
Never, ever underestimate sugar in dependency. I used to work in a homeless shelter in Edinburgh, and we have 40 guys would come in and would help them, would put them to sleep, and not put them to sleep. We would help them. We'd feed them, etc., and give them beds and everything. And the only time that we had a serious incident was first thing in the morning. Everyone woke up. They were sober. They were substance users. They were alcohol users. They woke up one morning. We ran out of sugar, and there were tables and chairs flying across the room.
Wow.
Because we'd run out of sugar. So they were all substance users, dependency on either drugs or alcohol. They could cope with that, no problem, but they run out of sugar, and there were fights, and we had police vans and everything outside because of sugar. So don't underestimate the sugar.
Wow, that's it. That's crazy. Okay, this next question is a really good one, and it's something that our medical advisor at Thrive, Dr. Volpicelli, has taught me a lot about. So they say, as a client of TSM, my question is this: while taking naltrexone, I no longer feel the high of alcohol. Of course, that's the endorphin reward being blocked or blunted. However, my anxiety still goes down when I have a drink because it alleviates withdrawal. Will this interfere with my pharmacological extinction process? So, that is something Dr. V we do a Q&A in our program with Dr. V every month, and he has talked a lot about this. Because with naltrexone, as I understand it, you know, it's blocking the endorphin reward, but it's not going to be blocking the sedating effects of alcohol. So the relaxation makes you fall asleep, helping with the anxiety. And so sometimes when people drink for the sedating effects more so than the rewarding effects, and I find that most of us drink for a combination of both, they can still get the benefits from the alcohol. Just like you say, it alleviates the withdrawal. And withdrawal could be anything, you know, from just anxiety, from, you know, drinking the night before, or more severe things. So naltrexone is still working to block the endorphin reward, which is oftentimes how most of us develop an alcohol use disorder. But in this case, it really becomes important to gradually learn different coping skills for things like anxiety, outside of just relying on alcohol. And it might take someone, in this case, longer to reach extinction, perhaps, because it is really difficult to learn different coping skills, especially for us daily drinkers, if there's been that strong link between alcohol as a coping skill. So it's an opportunity, yes, to continue to follow the TSM protocol, but also be really diligent and consistent with incorporating in, other ways that you can cope with anxiety, and also other ways to nourish your body so that, maybe with supplements or nutrition, so that you are not in that heightened anxiety state. Mindfulness work, breath work, things like that. And so, just in my experience, what I've seen with individuals like this, it may take longer to reach extinction, and there is more work that needs to be done to really learn different coping skills. But the great news is, like, you as an individual, this person, you have not always relied on alcohol. There's been, I'm sure, periods of your life where you didn't use alcohol as a coping skill. So going back, thinking about what you did to cope, thinking about things that soothe you outside of alcohol, and just giving yourself a chance to practice those things. What I did personally is I started by telling myself, okay, I can drink tonight, but before I do that, I'm going to wrap myself in a big fuzzy blanket and just like feel really cozy and comfortable, or take a bath, or go get a massage. So I was like allowing myself to try different coping skills first before I would turn to the alcohol. And I did that consistently. And I feel like that really helped me learn that, yes, alcohol was a coping skill, but there's a lot of other ways to cope as well. And the more you do them, like with anything, they start to feel effective and you start to look forward to them. What else would you say with that, Bruce? Anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that covers most of it. I think the last little bit was, does it interfere with my pharmacological extinction? No, not at all.
Yeah.
The pharmacological extinction is all about, without going into the details of it, is rewiring the neurological pathways. So when you have a drink, take your pill, wait an hour and have a drink, it's rewiring the pathways, which in the long term is what leads you to the pharmacological extinction, or control. A simple way of saying it is control of your alcohol intake, complete control. So all the other issues, like your anxiety, like maybe sleep patterns, or coping mechanisms, or how to deal with life with less and less and less alcohol, is all wrapped up in the habitual, behavioral, emotional, psychological side. But the extinction, I always say to people, is the nice thing with the Sinclair method is you don't have to be perfect on it. So many people think, well, I've had 2 alcohol-free days this week, so therefore I can't ever not have 2 alcohol-free days. Right. So I say to people, listen, it actually, here's the crazy thing, and I don't have time to explain it, so maybe one time or Katie will explain it when she speaks to you. The process of every time that you take your pill and have a drink, it's rewiring the pathway, and as a result of that, that's what gives you the long-term success. That's one side of the process, the neurological side. The other side is the habitual side. Now, the habitual side and the emotional, psychological side determines whether I have 1 drink or 5 drinks. So that's all tied in with habit and behaviors, etc., etc. So what we're doing on the other side is we are changing those habits. So to change a habit, you have to do it more often than not. You don't have to do it 100%. So therefore, if you have a Saturday night where you want to go to a wedding and you want to have a few more drinks, take your pill, go to the wedding and have a few extra drinks and enjoy it. Yeah. And don't feel guilty about it and everything else. Come Sunday or Monday, get back in the saddle and go back into the routine of your habitual change program. Because as long as you're doing it 5 out of 7, 6 out of 7, long term, it's going to happen. Yeah. So sorry, that's a long way to say it won't affect the pharmacological extinction. Just give yourself grace and give yourself the kindness to know that you have time to adjust to coming back to being the real you without the volume of alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you and I have talked about this a lot, Bruce, and we've seen it with people we've worked with where perhaps they have already reached pharmacological extinction neurologically in the brain, but the behaviors haven't caught up yet. I think of one success story on my channel. Her name's Melissa. You can type it into YouTube and find it. But she was someone who was on TSM and naltrexone for 9 months. She was still pretty much drinking every single day. But after 9 months, she got to the point where she didn't even like the alcohol anymore. She would drink wine and like chase it with water. And she could see so clearly that this was just the habit. Like she didn't even want to drink, but it was like her comfort blanket, the thing she turned to every night. And so what she did, she just decided to have a 30-day break from alcohol. She was not planning to quit drinking, but that break alone was enough to help her reset her habits and realize that she didn't want to drink anymore because she had done so many extinction sessions, meaning drinking on naltrexone, that her brain no longer saw alcohol as this reward and thing she wanted to turn to, but her habits hadn't caught up yet. She was still doing that behavior every day and not giving herself a chance to, have some alcohol-free days or go out and enjoy life in other ways. But just by getting that break, it helped her break up her habits. And often for a lot of us, when we're addicted to alcohol, taking a 30-day break doesn't make it easy for us to stay sober. In fact, many of us, maybe we don't make it the 30 days. Maybe at the end of the 30 days, we're racing to that other, or just to be able to start drinking again. But with naltrexone, those alcohol-free days are really helpful and really how we can establish different habits. And just like our brain learned alcohol as a reward, it can learn a lot of other things as well, but we have to be willing to teach it and do that with repetition and consistency. But it's amazing as people start to see, oh, like, actually, I feel like going to take a dance lesson. I don't feel like drinking tonight. And it's just so cool to kind of rediscover yourself and rebuild your life in that way. And naltrexone makes it much easier to do.
Hmm. I learned a while ago that there's a big we spent the first year when we were working with trying to figure out what is craving and what is habit. What is craving, what is habit? And then I went back and I read The Cure for Alcoholism the second time. And when I read it the second time, I came to page 30. I use it all the time. Page 30 in The Cure for Alcoholism, around about that page, there's a graph and a whole chapter where Dr. Sinclair had researched craving for endorphin. So what he realized that if you take the pill, wait an hour, take the pill and wait an hour, after 90 to 100 days, the majority of the craving is dealt with. It's gone after 90 to 100 days. So therefore, we know after 90 to 100 days of someone taking the medication, then the reason that people are drinking is not because they're addicted and chasing the dependency on the endorphin, because that's dealt with. They are chasing or drinking because of habit and situation and circumstance. So that then isolates, then we can focus completely on that. So like Katie was saying, I've worked with 3 people just recently. One of those guys, that guy I was telling you about earlier on, Katie, that was my advice to him. But again, please, just a very quick thing here. If you are going to do this, please seek a trained person who knows about withdrawals, etc. Please do not do it from a higher level and suddenly go, right, I'm going to stop drinking, without seeking medical advice or from a prescriber or a doctor. But at the right time and the right place, maybe 12 months into the process, again, be very careful with it. But with this guy, I said, hey, listen, try stopping drinking for a week and see what happens. And stop drinking for a week. And I think that was 2 or 3 months ago now. And it was just that, it was the cessation just to say, right, okay, I'm going to do this. And then they realized, okay, there is no craving here. They were waiting for the craving to hit them, and they were frightened of it and worried about it. But when they did stop, they went, wow, I've got no craving. And I said to them this afternoon, I said, that's what Katie did. She'd reduced right the way down and got to a stage where she just thought she'd have a week off. And that was, what, 5.5, 6 years ago?
Yeah, 6 years ago.
And peace, complete peace.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like we were talking about earlier, it's a night and day difference to have alcohol-free time before TSM versus after. And even if you haven't even had your first alcohol-free day yet, some people, like the thing I hear almost all of the time from people is that, oh, it was easier than I thought it would be. Like once they have their first alcohol-free day, because historically when we've tried it, it's been white-knuckled, difficult. But for a lot of people, if they've had opportunities to drink on naltrexone and start reversing this in the brain, maybe more psychologically they're worried about the first AF day, but once they have it, it's not as difficult as they thought. So hopefully that encourages people. So this individual says, if you stop taking naltrexone and do drink, I notice the alcohol effects are much worse. That's kind of a worrisome thing. So if you basically drink without naltrexone, yeah, it's interesting. I don't know what you've seen in this, Bruce, I never drank without naltrexone once I started, but I have heard two things. I've heard people say that if they do it once or twice, it almost feels like they still have naltrexone on board. Now, this is not to condone that. It's the golden rule of the treatment to comply. If you mess with that, you just simply will not be successful with TSM. But I will say some people say that even if they do it once or twice, they feel like they still have naltrexone on board. But other people, I mean, there is risk for essentially binging and drinking to excess because your receptors have been blocked repeatedly. And then all of a sudden, when they're unblocked, according to Dr. Sinclair's research, they're essentially super sensitized for a period of time. And so it might be extra reinforcing to drink without naltrexone on board. So it can lead to a really heavy drinking session. Any thoughts on that, Bruce?
Yeah, absolutely. Just for people that don't know me, my background was rehab center management. And I hear some people sort of saying that, well, if I have a drink without taking the naltrexone, I then go straight back into drinking heavily again, and it's quite often more than I was drinking before and everything else. Yes, you will do. Exactly, will do that. But that is what we call relapse. Every time we saw it in rehab, every time that someone relapsed, they went back to drinking what they were drinking, and very often more. So now, if you're doing it on naltrexone, just because someone's taking naltrexone, it doesn't mean that you're exempt from relapse. A relapse is going to happen just as quickly on naltrexone and the Sinclair method as it would happen with an abstinent-based program if you pick up a drink. If someone picks up a drink, if you asked them and spoke to them and analyzed it, they would say, wow, it was really sensitive and I had all the side effects and everything from drinking. But it's because they've been abstinent for ages, and all of a sudden, when they have a drink, they get this huge endorphin reward, and bang, they're straight back into chasing it again. They'll wake up the next morning and they'll feel like absolute rubbish. So I don't think that the effects are any worse, but I think what is happening is that you are just simply relapsing.
Yeah.
And that's what Katie was saying, is that just because someone take the golden rule with the Sinclair method is never, ever, 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 ever have a drink without a pill. Otherwise, you will relapse, and it's guaranteed. There's no ifs, buts, wins. I always say to people, if you are compliant with the medication, you've got a minimum of 78% success rate. If you don't take the medication, you've got a 100% success rate of relapse.
So. Yeah, a lot of success with this treatment, it is around that mindset piece, like making compliance a non-negotiable for you and understanding when you start the treatment, okay, what is it going to take for me to make this a non-negotiable? You know, when people go non-compliant, it's not that they're destroyed forever and they can never go back to TSM. They can restart the method, but it's just a matter of prolonging this process. Perhaps what I've seen happen is someone thinks, oh, I'll go non-compliant this one time, and then it leads to weeks or months of non-compliance. And it just becomes a really frustrating process where you continue to stay stuck in the cycles of alcohol use disorder. So if you're going on the treatment, I really feel and believe it's important to focus on the mindset piece and make sure you're committed to this. Again, like Bruce said, you don't have to be perfect. Some days or weeks, all you can do is take the pill. You're not going to do anything else, and that's totally fine. But to at least make that the one thing that you will, as one of our physicians says, you have to be perfect at one thing on TSM, and it's the compliance piece. If you do that, the rest will follow for sure.
Cool. And a lady that I know well, I don't know if you know her well.
Sally?
Yeah.
Yep.
So, hey, Sally, hope you're well. So, it's always encouraging to hear you're working together. I continue to learn more and more about neurological wiring that drives that survival messaging to the brain. TSM continues to be a treatment I recommend as part of one's recovery path to freedom from alcohol. Thanks, Sally. And keep going.
Yeah.
Not you, obviously, but you know who we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Thinking of you, Sally. Always appreciate hearing from you.
Lovely lady. Absolute gem.
All right. Seth says, with nausea, what is the timing for taking, let's say, Zofran? Is it before naltrexone or with naltrexone? So what I've heard is when people are taking an anti-nausea medication like Dramamine or Zofran or Nausine or something like that, is they take it 20 to 30 minutes before taking naltrexone. What have you heard, Bruce? Or have you?
My honest answer is I have no idea.
Okay.
If it's an an anti-nausea, our doctor would deal directly with the client, and depending on what he's prescribing, and I'm guessing the individual, then they would then. So I don't know. Is my honest answer. My answer would have to be speak to the prescriber. It depends on. Yeah, I don't know anyone enough about it.
And that's what I've heard, because I personally didn't struggle with nausea. I was always eating with the naltrexone, but I've heard from people who do take it that they take it 20 to 30 minutes before they take naltrexone. So I don't know if that's a best practice or what. Something I should probably learn more about, though.
Yeah. And Linda's saying, you've mentioned earlier on fatigue, taking a lot of naps. My quick question, Linda, is have you seen a reduction if you drink wine? If you've seen a reduction recently, then the fatigue is starting. Try and eat a lot more fruit, bananas, apples, strawberries, things that have got natural sugar in it. And you may find that it's the drop in the alcohol or drop in the sugar from the alcohol that's causing it.
All right. This individual says, thanks, Bruce. Does the drug interact with other medications? How can I find that?
Okay. Does it interact? As far as we've experienced, it only interacts with opiate-based painkillers. I don't know what country you're in, the hydrocodone, tramadols, etc., etc. Those things. As far as we've experienced, or here in the UK over the last 6 and a bit years, it hasn't interacted with anything else. Obviously, any cancer medication, again, just to be double checked with the doctor on that one. But your average, it doesn't interact with any your antidepressants, which is the common question, or anti-anxiety medications. Absolutely no issues there. No issue with headache tablets or whatever you are taking for medication. But the most common one and the main one that we've heard regularly is opiate-based painkillers. But again, always double check with prescriber on that side of things. Unless you've heard of any others, Katie?
No, same. Yeah, I haven't really heard of any others. Usually, yeah, it is a question they ask the doctor, but yeah, that's it. Hope that answers the question. And then Linda says, I'm happy to hear that by taking naltrexone that there is no immediate pressure to have dry days. Yes, exactly. This is not something where we're trying to force you to be abstinent straight away at all. In fact, I think people do better on TSM. Like Bruce and I are coaches, counselors, we're guiding people, but we ultimately want to empower people to set their own goals, so that they don't feel like they're being pressured to do something sooner than they're ready to or do more than they're ready to. But Linda says, if you want to have dry days, should you take naltrexone an hour before your typical drinking time just in case you end up drinking? That's a good question. And I'll go, Bruce. I would love to hear what you have to say. There's not necessarily one right way to do that. And the reason is because some people find that if they take naltrexone, they kind of have that as a permission to drink. So it's harder for them to go for that alcohol-free day because they figure, well, I've got naltrexone, I might as well drink. So that's one challenge with that. Others don't have that issue and they take it as a protection just in case. And it's not a big deal to them whether or not they end up drinking that day. So it really is a personal choice. For me, what I did is it was helpful for me when I was planning an alcohol-free day just to not take naltrexone. And that made it easier for me to have that AF day, because even if I changed my mind, then it was kind of this stumbling block. Like, okay, well, I'm going to drink, but I have to take naltrexone and I have to wait another hour. So it was helpful for me in that way. But some people do find that taking it just in case is helpful, because especially if you're early on and you have that urge to drink and it's a question of, am I going to be compliant or not? then that might be a good idea to take it regardless. Some people do take it daily in the beginning. We work with physicians that prescribe it that way just to establish the habit of taking it. Naltrexone has been shown to be an anti-craving medicine, so it can perhaps function in that way as well. But typically it's a really individualized process where the person kind of decides alongside their doctor what's the best way for them to take it. So there's not a hard and fast rule. Some people find it's helpful because they're just protected just in case they are going to drink, and it's going to prevent them from going non-compliant. Others find, like me, that just not taking it on those days is easier, and it's perhaps more motivating to go AF that day. What would you say, Bruce? What do you see with the people you work with?
Just the same thing. I'm only working people through a program, so we're working towards an alcohol-free day, especially on the first alcohol-free day. I would always say to people, if it's your very first attempt at an alcohol-free day for months, take your pill at your usual time, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whatever the time is. And then if you feel like having a drink later on, you can have a drink, because it takes the pressure off psychologically as well. Now, once you've done it for 1 or 2 weeks, you'll find that you've got the confidence to do it, and you won't be fighting it, and then you'll find you don't need to take it. But for doing it for the first time, I would always say to people, take the pill, just in case you feel as if you're not going to make it through the night, and then you can have a drink at the end of the night, and then try again next week, or try again in a couple of days. So you can't go wrong with it. We wouldn't want to be doing it regularly, but it's a case of once you've done it once, got the alcohol-free day once, it will become easier and easier and easier, and you can control. It's all the Sinclair method is all about control. The more you can control the drink, the more you have in regards to when you take the meds.
Yeah, well said. This person says, any studies on naltrexone use in type 1 diabetes patients? I don't know of anything specifically. There might be mention of that in one of the studies, but I don't know. What about you, Bruce? Do you know anything about that?
Keep chatting.
Okay. Are you looking up a study right now?
I'll have a quick look.
And they had a follow-up question. Katie, are you drinking gin or vodka in that little cup? This little cup? No, it's an espresso shot that I was drinking that is gone now. I haven't had a drink in over 6 years. And if I were to drink, I probably would not have gin or vodka. Like if I were to drink again, I would probably have a beer, a champagne, or maybe a wine. But since going through the Sinclair method, the thought of hard liquor just absolutely disgusts me, which is crazy because I used to drink like whiskey all the time and other types of hard alcohol. But that's something that even if I were to drink again, I don't think I would be able to stomach hard alcohol. Yuck. The thought of it is just like making me gag a little bit right now. Oh, that's funny.
Sorry, I've actually just read this and read the question again, and I mistook the question. Any studies on naltrexone use? I'm guessing you're talking about, is naltrexone helpful for type 1 diabetes? I think it's the question. Am I right in reading that, Katie?
If there's been studies on it, I assume that maybe that's kind of the motivation behind the question.
Yeah, so there's been no studies of naltrexone, the method and the way that it's used for the Sinclair method at 50 milligrams, but there have been a few studies and anecdotal reports in regards to LDN and type 1 diabetes. LDN is something called low dose naltrexone that's used between 2 and 5 milligram, depending on the prescriber. So there have been a few studies done with LDN is low dose naltrexone. So very, very low doses, which is used for many, many other things, but completely separate to the Sinclair method. So I think the answer to that one is no, nothing conclusive anyway.
Okay. I know we're near the top of the hour. We have a few more questions. Do you have a few more minutes, Bruce, to stay a little bit later to get to these questions?
Yep.
Okay. So this is a really good question. They say, I can go 10 days alcohol-free, but I find the craving or thinking about the next glass of wine doesn't go away. Is that typical of the brain chemistry you mentioned? Would you like to answer that, Bruce?
So just a few questions. Again, it's a public forum. We don't need to know the the actual details, but just ask yourself the questions. 10 days alcohol free, but the craving or thinking about the next glass of wine doesn't go away. It's possible to what we call run ahead of the pill. So what Katie was talking about earlier on, that some people's wiring of the pathways are way ahead of where they are drink-wise. It's also possible to reduce too quickly on the Sinclair method. So again, depending on how long you've been on the process for, how much you were drinking in the first place, it's possible if you've gone from drinking every day to all of a sudden doing 10 alcohol-free days in the early stages, in the first month to 3 months, then that's far too big a step at this stage, and it will be craving that you're experiencing. If you've been on the program for more than 90 days, then what I'd be asking was, okay, the chances are it's not craving. The chances are that it's a habitual habit, a psychological habitual habit that is kicking into play, because again, I need to ask the questions. When was the last time you did 10 days alcohol free? Is that common for you to be doing that? If it's not, then maybe the 10 days is too big a step. The golden rule when you're making the habitual changes is, if you make a habitual change, in other words, having a day alcohol free or 2 days or 3 days, if you can't sustain it week after week after week, then you've made too big a change too quickly. So simply backtrack. I always say to clients, make little habitual changes that you can't fail at. So make a little change that you can't fail at, instead of going. Unfortunately, when I've had other dependencies apart from I didn't have alcohol, I had drugs. But when you're caught in dependency, you want a quick fix and you want to get bang there straight away. So sometimes it all depends on how many alcohol-free days you've had. But if you can't sustain 10, it just means doing 10 at this stage is too many. Cut it back to a level that you know that you can sustain week after week, and cement that in, and then move on to another day and another day. Very quick answer.
Yeah. No, it's true. And also, like, depending on how long you've been on the method, it's like, is it a genuine craving, or is it just that you're thinking about wine because it's 5 p.m., for example? That was something for me where I could see that I was on the method and I was trying to have more alcohol-free days, but 5 o'clock, my brain was like on autopilot. Oh, thinking about wine. So I started taking a wine glass, putting sparkling water and like a lime in it, and rewarding myself with that instead. And over time, like 20, 30 days, I saw that my brain started to think about that sparkling water at 5 o'clock. So it could be a thought habit that may not be a total craving. A craving is usually something that like doesn't go away and it just keeps bothering you. And, that's the indication to have, if you're on TSM, to have a drinking session with naltrexone to kind of extinguish that urge. But yeah, I don't know. I'm assuming this person's on TSM. I don't know if they're talking about this like they are. Okay. Yeah, like Bruce said, working up those alcohol-free days can often be helpful. And then seeing if you can replace that reward with something else, and understanding, is this a real craving, or is my brain just thinking about it because I'm in this environment, or it's a certain time of day or something like that.
Where are we? I've lost.
Sally, it's just an interesting comment. She says low blood sugar also causes nausea. There is the equivalent amount of sugar in a glass of many wines to about 4 ounces of orange juice, which is often given when someone donates blood at a blood bank. So that's interesting. I wonder if people who have more nausea on naltrexone, if it's linked to low blood sugar. I've never heard of that.
Sally, you are a scientific breakthrough. I'm going to write that down.
Send us your research, Sally.
I think that's very plausible.
Yeah,
well, it's really plausible. Sorry, Sally, I'm sort of saying, well, no, that is right. You obviously know. There's nausea. I think that's very feasible or possible. Very, very possible.
And this person says, so what is your advice when a GP will no longer prescribe naltrexone as they do not think this medicine is to be used this way? That happens a lot. We just were talking with someone whose doctor would only give them 3 months worth and said that they had to quit drinking after that. So if you're in the US, there's tons of other prescribers that you support the Sinclair method, and you can meet with through telemedicine in all 50 states. I don't know. Do you know this person? Are they in the US, Bruce, or do you know?
I know the name. I don't know where I know the name from. Apologies. Is it A.L. Lingard or
Yeah.
Al? I know that your name from somewhere. I don't know where. I think you
Yeah, if
might
you're
have
in the
been.
US, I would just go with another provider. But I don't know if you're in another country, what the situation is. Try another doctor. Bringing in some of the scientific research about the Sinclair method. But yeah, at least in the US, you can get the medicine from another provider that understands this method and will prescribe.
Hmm.
Oh,
And
they're in the UK, Steve says.
oh, they're in the UK. Give me a phone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
uh,
unfortunate. It's difficult to
Advice
get
from
over.
the GP will no longer prescribe naltrexone. So yeah, sometimes in the UK, maybe that's where I know the name. Sometimes in the UK, the doctors will prescribe it for a certain period because, for lots of different reasons. There are other prescribers, but if you need a prescriber, give us a shout.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully that starts to change over there. It's like the healthcare system is foreign to me over there. I don't understand how it works, but I'm so thankful that in the US it's gotten much easier at least.
And our price of medication needs to drop dramatically as well, so
Mm.
compared to America and Europe.
Ah, okay.
So
So this person asked, where do I get naltrexone? If you're in the US, Thrive, our program, we can refer you to a telemedicine doctor here in the States. We work with physicians that specialize in the treatment. Um, you can learn more. Our website's linked below, or thrivealcoholrecovery.com. Or you can also chat with your GP about it as well. I always say it's a 50-50 chance whether they'll prescribe it, or if they do prescribe it, they may or may not support TSM or prescribe it that way. But you can always ask your GP as well. Okay.
while drinking on naltrexone, I want to take care of my body and make sure I'm getting the right amount of vitamins. However, I read the alcohol prohibits the absorption of vitamins. I don't know enough about that subject, I'm afraid.
Yeah, their follow-up question is taking vitamin supplements while doing TSM beneficial, or are the vitamins not getting absorbed because of the alcohol? Um, I'll say, of course, I'm not like a nutritionist, but our friend Dr. Umhau, he is in the US here and he really specializes in different medications, but also nutrition therapy for alcohol use disorder. And I know he's a huge proponent of when he puts people on TSM to also get them taking different vitamins that are essential and often depleted when we drink excessively. Just knowing from him, it's B vitamins, magnesium, vitamin C. He's huge on fish oil, like mega dose fish oil. So I know just what I've learned from him that he would certainly recommend people do vitamin therapy alongside TSM or something like that. I don't I don't know enough about the science to say whether or not, your body, what percentage of the vitamins your body are going to be absorbing or whatever. But man, I would imagine it could only be helpful. Yeah. So I would, if it were me, I would want to do that for sure.
Yeah.
That was something, to be honest, I was not really into or aware of supplements when I went on TSM. And something that was surprising to me was that I didn't feel as healthy as I thought I was going to feel after I was reducing my drinking. I was tired, low energy, kind of brain fog. I just didn't feel great. And I wish I would have known about supplementation because I think that could have helped probably. Of course, I'll never know, but I wish I would have known about that when I was on TSM.
Yeah. Okay. And then another one, it's because you can't get it in the UK. Wake up, guys. Tell people how it is in the UK. You can't get it through the NHS. You can get it through certain private doctors, addiction specialist doctors. So you won't be able to get it through the majority of NHS GPs, but you will be able to get it through specific addiction specialist doctors. So we work with an addiction specialist doctor here in the UK who's been prescribing for us for 6 years. And there's there are other doctors who will prescribe naltrexone, private doctors. You're right. Most places on the NHS, you can't get it on the NHS here in the UK. That's a
What do
London
they tell
story.
you? Like, what is it like? Yeah, I'm just curious what happens when people try to get it.
So we've got two systems here. One is the NHS that you pay for out your salary. So you pay a percentage every month out your salary, and that gets you free medical care for the majority of things, but not medications. Well, in Scotland it's free, in England it's not, but that's different stories. But so you've got your NHS, your National Health Service, and then you've got private doctors. So your NHS service, what they do currently is that they will recommend you go to an alcohol and drug support program, who will then prescribe or not prescribe, because it needs to be prescribed off label like it is everywhere in the world. Here in the UK, we haven't caught up to what they're doing in America. So through the NHS system, they won't prescribe it. Now, the main reason they won't prescribe it in the UK is that they won't allow it to be prescribed without a support program. So we are the only real organisation here in the UK who offer a full support program. So our doctor who did the original trials with naltrexone in the UK is happy to prescribe naltrexone because he knows that we've got a proper support program to look after it. So it is difficult to get hold of it, absolutely, but it's not impossible. If anyone does need it, then in the UK, give us a shout.
Okay, that's good to know. That's kind of was my experience here in the US in 2017 when I was trying it. Like, I called a bunch of different doctors, psychiatrists, addiction specialists, and they said, we won't prescribe it. Some wouldn't prescribe it at all, but some said, we may prescribe it after you go to like a detox and rehab center. So it was like, yeah, I'm so thankful that has changed since then, but it's unbelievable. It's a life-saving medicine. It feels like malpractice that it's not, even just over the counter, because it is such a benign medicine. That was something we talked about at the naltrexone symposium. I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but this could potentially be something that doesn't even require a prescription.
And Seth saying that LDN has very wide use. Absolutely, Seth. LDN, again, it's not a subject we're on, but if you type in LDN Research Trust, LDN is proving to be very, very helpful or successful with over 800 different medical conditions.
Yeah.
And yes, cancer is one of them. So Parkinson's, tremors in Parkinson's, autism, loads of things. Loads and loads of things. Incredible.
And what something else he said, Seth, I didn't have 10 AF days, alcohol-free days, until I had 5 months in, but I reached extinction shortly after. So that's good, just for people, like the realistic expectations around those alcohol-free days. That for many of us, it takes time to build, us daily drinkers too. It's different than people who are more like binge drinkers and they already have alcohol-free days naturally. But yeah, some people, they don't have an alcohol-free day, early on in the method, and it takes time to get there. But I find that once people start getting them more regularly, the easier they become. And it's essential to extinction and success with the method, of course. But it takes time.
Where are we?
Yeah. Bruce, yeah. On the NHS, they won't prescribe it unless you're abstinent after detox. Interesting. Okay.
And even then, they're reluctant to do it. If you're abstinent after detox, they're likely to prescribe a composite or baclofen.
Okay.
We're just a bit behind America. We'll catch you up. We're always about 3 or 4 years behind the States. So.
All right. Well, hopefully that happens. Well, we had that shortage here, which has been really stressful for a lot of people. It seems to be resolving, but yeah, I don't know for sure.
So yeah, well, we believe that the naltrexone companies in the UK are pushing the newspapers at the moment to promote it. So.
Oh yeah.
So it's
good to see.
Seeing what's happening there.
Yeah, this person, I meant to say, is it safe for type 1 diabetes patients to use? Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't heard that it's not. I don't know why it wouldn't be, but yeah, I haven't looked at any research on that.
The doctors are very willing to prescribe naltrexone here in the US. However, they prescribe it while telling you not to drink and simply
And
imply
implies, yeah.
low cravings on its own. I think in America, you've got the opposite issue to what we have here. It's becoming more and more and more available, which is absolutely fantastic. But with the danger of that is that people then start thinking, oh, it's just a pill, it's just a pill, just a pill.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in this country, they won't prescribe it unless there is a proper support program in most cases. And it then slows the whole process. So it's a kind of, it's trying to find a middle balance of it, of the support side of it. And I am really, really, really going through a period now. And obviously that's what we both do. But it is absolutely vital that people have the emotional, psychological support as they are reducing their alcohol intake, and they're making sure that they're reducing at the right speed, that they've got a program, they've got videos, that they've got groups that they can go and speak to people, because it's just, there is so much more than just swallowing a pill. The science is amazing. The science is there. The science shows us exactly how the process works, but we're also emotional human beings with that we need to work through some of that emotional stuff as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I would say probably about half the people or more who join our program already have the medicine, and they are realizing that it's more to it than just taking a pill, and they want that guidance and coaching support or group support or things like that. So, yeah, it is more accessible here to get naltrexone, but I think people are smart enough. And I mean, to be honest, I was someone who was like, oh, the pill's going to help me drink less. I was kind of naive to how complicated my relationship with alcohol had become and how many areas of my life it touched. And about 4 months into the method or so, there wasn't any like Sinclair method program at that time, but I started seeing a therapist and worked through some difficult things that were happening as a result of just my drinking and drinking less and kind of having to process all of that. But support is crucial, I think, for most people. All right. This person says it has taken me 6 months to get 2 alcohol-free days a week, feeling proud of my progress. Good advice, Katie and Bruce. Good.
Well done.
That's
fantastic.
Yeah, to have consistent alcohol-free days, that's huge. So congrats to you.
Sorry, one quick thing on that one is, as work through the alcohol-free days slowly. You're doing perfect. Get your 2 alcohol-free days, sustain that for a few weeks, and then slowly start working towards a third one, and then sustain that for 2 or 3 weeks. What you will find is when you get to 4 alcohol-free days, you'll find there's a huge change at 4. So what you'll find, the floodgates will, it seems like it's taking a bit of time at the moment, but once you get to 4 alcohol-free days, you're not drinking less days than you are drinking. And you'll really start kicking in and going, you're waking up feeling a bit groggy, a bit tired, a bit sort of hungover. And then you'll really start getting more, it will start, I call it compound speed. The program speeds up the further you get down with it. So get down with it. That sounded like I was younger.
Get down with it. Get down with it.
Get down on it. So I've got that song in my head now. So yeah, just take your time with it. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, and this person said I had a little bit of a problem with my pharmacist in the US. I was using naltrexone as per TSM, and my prescriber knew that as well. And the pharmacist really pushed against the way it was prescribed. Yeah, I've had pharmacists comment on my videos before and say, danger, like you should not be drinking on this medicine. And again, back to the naltrexone symposium last week, these experts in this field of naltrexone who are truly the world's experts on it. There's just a lot of misinformation around naltrexone and its use and its safety and efficacy and things like that. So yeah, there's a lot of education that still needs to be done. Just like one of our members, they were prescribed it and the doctor would only give him 3 months worth and was like, you need to quit by then. And that's just not conducive to how TSM works. And a lot of people are on this medication long term, especially if they're continuing to drink in moderation and things like that. So, yeah.
Okay. And someone's saying they find in the UK UK-based Sinclair Method detox groups are far too expensive. It's entirely unaffordable for me. I'm not sure what you're saying there. If you're saying that Sinclair Method and detox groups, I think maybe you might be saying that the Sinclair Method programs. The Sinclair Method is not a detox process. I mean, people can go down to abstinence if they want to, but if they go down to the Sinclair Method is not a method of detox to stop people drinking. It can be used as that, but if it is unaffordable, unfortunately, at the moment here in the UK, it is all private, unfortunately, because the NHS aren't funding anything or supporting it. So trust us, here in the UK, we are speaking to different organisations, different places. But to be honest with you, just one quick thing on that is that, yes, we do charge for it. But I sat down with someone the other day that was drinking, I think it was about 2 bottles of wine. It was somewhere in the region of about 2 bottles of wine at the weekend and a bottle of wine during the week. And I think in the space of about 2 months, they had saved the money that they'd cost for the program. And that's in the first 2 months. And then that was, and then that's obviously ongoing for it. So yeah, it does cost a little bit up front. But lots of people do have a go at us in the UK for saying, well, you're charging for the program. And I say, well, but I never hear anyone having a go at the alcohol companies charging for the drink.
That's true.
I'm not asking a bit facetious, but it's a lot of people are trying to get the guys that are trying to help rather than the guys that are causing the issue in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, if we were funded by the government or insurance companies would cover it, I mean, that would be awesome, but it's just not the case. And we wouldn't be able to dedicate all of our time and have team members helping us and doctors coming in to help. And, we couldn't do it for free. I wish that was the case, that we were funded by the government or grants or insurance companies or things like that. But maybe in the future, I don't know, that would be really cool. But, yeah, even I worked at RIA Health here in the US, and even they worked and they continue to work to get insurance to cover it. But even with insurance covering it, oftentimes the claims were denied. And it was just this battle with the insurance companies here in the US to cover the treatment. And, even this, legitimate organization that had all kinds of funding to make it covered by insurance, even once it was covered, the insurance companies were still denying it. That was my experience there. So it's crazy that they're willing to pay $30,000 a month for an inpatient rehab center here, in most cases. But naltrexone and TSM, it's a battle right now.
I can say this on yours, Katie. When I used to manage alcohol and drug rehab centres in Scotland, to fund and pay for what we call a 10-bed unit, a 10-bed rehab here in the UK per year costs somewhere, on a cheap one, will be between £700,000 and £750,000 a year. That's $1 million a year. Now, you normally get between 30 and 40 people going through that rehab throughout the year. Well, on the one I was, which was a 6-month program, with a success rate of 5 to 10%.
Wow.
So you work that, you're talking about 10 people for $1 million. What Katie and I could do with $1 million with the success rate the Sinclair Method has is mind blowing.
Yeah.
So if there is anyone out there who is a funder,
yeah. Anyone have any ideas? Yeah. We're just at the symposium event last week, several of us who are TSM success stories were just like, how do we get this treatment more well known? Because there's this shared frustration among everyone who knows about this treatment of like, why isn't it more well known? And we're talking about the power in numbers and petitioning, local politicians or big organizations who, have insurance providers that they're in network with. And just, if anyone has ideas, like reach out, because it is this question of just how do we make this more well-known and accessible for people? We don't know yet. We're trying every day to advocate and talk about it and do this grassroots movement. And I think it's moving the needle a little bit, but it's going to take some time.
Learn to unicycle, Katie.
Yeah. Yeah, do what Bruce did, just unicycle for, what was that? Like, how long were you out there? 8 days?
Oh, no, it was 3.5 weeks.
Oh gosh. Oh my gosh. No, that's not happening.
500 miles we did. So
Yeah. All right. Well, we went a little bit long. Thanks everyone so much for sticking around. Any final words from you, Bruce?
alcohol dependency is 100% endorphin related. The addiction is endorphin. It's not your fault. It's the only thing I always stress when I finish my TikToks and everything. I just say, listen, number one, it is not your fault. I don't care what you've heard, who's told you what, where, when, why, and how. Alcohol addiction is not your fault. What someone does under the influence is their responsibility, but the addiction is not your fault. And number two, I genuinely believe, and Katie believes as well, today with naltrexone in a support program, it is treatable.
Yes. It absolutely is. And it's amazing what can change just in the span of a year. It's not an overnight cure, but man, it's life changing when it's done correctly and when it's given enough time to work. So thank you guys so much for being here. We're going to wrap up. Bruce and I will be back again soon with another Q&A. We'll see you guys next time.